All right, so for the 5 people paying attention, thanks for being here. For everyone else, just vibe, it's all right. It's Bangkok. So today we're going to talk about just the current state of L1s and L2s. It's become kind of a hot topic because even for us as a project, when we're looking at different chains to deploy on, I think over the last couple of years, we've gone from talking to 1, 2, 3 different chains at a time. Now we have dozens of chains reaching out to us. And there's definitely a sense of infra fatigue, not only from community, from users, but even from projects. So maybe we can start with just a quick round of intros, and then we can dive into some of the complexities around this, like L1 and L2 fragmentation.
All right. Should we take intros from the audience too, maybe? All right, well, yeah, the short version is I'm Adam. I'm one of the founders of Standard Crypto, and we back SynFutures at the seed.
I'm Luis. I'm the GP at SevenX Ventures.
Momir here from IOSG Ventures. IOSG is a crypto VC firm operating since 2017 and also one of SynFutures backers.
And I'm Tom. I'm a GP at Dragonfly.
Awesome. So maybe let's start with just a high-level question. Has your sentiment, or as an investor, has your kind of perspective or sentiment around emerging L1s and L2s changed over the last, let's say, 6 months to a year?
I mean, I don't think my sentiment has changed. I think, most projects, chains or not chains, they sort of struggle to justify their existence. And I think that is kind of the problem that a lot of teams face is just why this versus thing XYZ that already exists or is very, very similar. So I think most teams, that is kind of their fundamental problem is it's not, they made a bad decision here or here or here. It's it's the entire project is kind of like a no-op. It's this does nothing for anyone. And so it's almost unopinionated or very bland. And that's kind of your core problem versus having sort of a distinct perspective.
I think, objectively speaking, there is indeed too much infrastructure, too many L1s, too many L2s. But if you think from the market perspective, even for this new generation of L1s like Sui and Aptos, they're performing very well in the market. So it seems in terms of capacity of the secondary market to absorb some of these infra bets, it's still out there. And I would say that there is a lot of overlap between meme coins and infra. Infra also has a lot of mimetic effect that maybe some of the applications don't have. If you look into DeFi protocols, they are priced more strictly. Most of the DeFi protocols are priced at a certain multiple compared to the volume users. So once there are these fundamental metrics, it's also kind of putting a cap on the valuation. When it comes to infra, there is always kind of a sky's the limit attitude, and it would be very interesting to see how this next generation of infra launches in the next 3-4 months from Monad, MegaEat, Berachain, Movement, Eclipse. I think it will be interesting to see how market reacts to these tokens going forward.
Yeah, I think from my understanding, most of L1s, they don't have PMF at all. So I think before they launching their tokens, they are working with a lot of the farming studios. A lot of farmers doing the on-chain matrix for those L1s. That's the reason why you can see the TVL increase, on-chain matrix increase. And then in bull market, so we can see some L1s to pumping their token price and then grab the market attention, then have a lot of meme coin on top of that to say, oh, we have so-called building a very good ecosystem L1s. So, but that's the one part. Another part we also can see in some real world application perspective, there are some stable coins and traditional banks. They are trying to do the on-chain settlement, cross-border settlement on blockchain. I think even though it's bull market, everyone is caring about token price. We still need to basically boost those real applications, real builders, and real users on the L1 matrix. I feel like all the L1, L2 stage are very early right now. We are very early in that journey.
Yeah, I don't know that my view is that far off. Maybe I can try and add a little bit of nuance. I think right now is probably a really unique time in that it's never been this hard or this easy to launch a new L1 and L2. And what I mean by that is if you look at the history here, a lot of the historical discussion is around scaling and TPS and, hey, can we ever build a chain that can support use cases? And over the last, 6 months to a year, I think it's pretty clear that that's a resounding yes. But I think now you're seeing that being, yet another general purpose L1 or L2 or having yet another story about scaling isn't enough. Now I think that there is a lot, of evolution and benchmarking in the sense that if you're building something that is high throughput and a, really kind of there's many different ways it could look, but if you're building something that is dedicated to certain types of use cases around being high throughput, that's sort of one part of the market. But I think we're also seeing things like Unichain look really interesting when you have a specialized type of transaction you're trying to support. Now I think if you were to be far too general about that and lack specificity and tailoring in the chain you're building, it probably wouldn't be as compelling. But right now, we're actually seeing those types of use cases emerge in a meaningful way.
That's a good point, Adam. I've been thinking about how from the tech perspective, like scaling, efficiency, and cost, I feel like the L1 and L2 ecosystem has become somewhat commoditized, right? What do you guys think is, for like an emerging chain, what's the biggest moat that they can build right now, right? Is it brand? Is it community? Is it like the specialized use case like you mentioned?
I think those things all go hand in hand, right? I think you want to have a brand of being a specialized and repeatable use case. I think as much fun as vibes and meme coins are, that's more of a measure of potential energy, and I think that we're thinking a lot about kinetic energy right now and what's actually being employed and used.
I think for most of the emerging L1s, L2s, the most important thing is be patient. Like they are already raising so much money, and they have time to build a real product, building like the developer ecosystem. They don't need to release a token soon, because if they release a token, which means they need to build product, they need to manage a token price. That's a totally different thing to do. Sometimes managing token price may delay, may be the barrier for the product and ecosystem development. That reason why I think the most important thing is a crypto project releasing token too easy. They need to be patient to build the real the L1, the real ecosystem.
I think if it comes to the ecosystem that actually have some unique applications and unique ecosystem, I think now it's just two. It's until recently it was only Ethereum, like DeFi primitives, NFT primitives, even first social primitives, gaming. It all started on Ethereum, and then for a long time we had everybody else just trying to copy what Ethereum has built and to launch next version of Uniswap, next version of Aave on just a different chain. And I think this is first time ever that one new vertical is being shaped outside of Ethereum ecosystem, and it's also happening on Solana, like with Deepin vertical. I have an impression that a lot of the Deepin projects are looking into Solana as a hub for this sort of vertical, and I think this is a especially interesting vertical, and this is one of the shifts that are starting to happen. I would like to see that some of these new L1s are also start introducing new kind of market directions and not just copying what Solana or Ethereum have offered already, and I think that would be great.
I agree with most of that.
What are your guys' thoughts on where base fits in all this? This is a base-themed event. Would love to get your candid take on what base is doing well, and what's your biggest critique on base?
Yeah, I think base is the perfect counterpoint to oh, we need token go up. I'm like, okay, there is no token. People know there's never going to be a token, but like, you know, hey, it's still coming and using the product and building on the product. And I think, you know, building on like a dev ecosystem is like a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy where people build stuff that they already see being successful. They're like, oh, I should build things like XYZ in this chain. And I think, you know, Base, I think there's this tweet which I really like when it launched, which was like Base is BSC for white people, which I'm like, I thought that's kind of what they were gonna do, but in practice, like you actually don't get that much kind of like first-class citizen support from Coinbase, right? Like, it's like another chain, and there's no token, and so it's really just like vibes and them like embrace and support and like promote kind of wacky, off-the-wall ideas, and then that kind of turns into this whole sort of dev ecosystem where I think everyone else is like, how do I copy-paste what every other chain has? We're gonna get all the major DeFi apps, we're gonna all the same stablecoins, and just like, you know, you sort of end up blanding yourself into nothingness. And I think Base's willingness to like just try wacky shit and embrace that and make that kind of the top of the pyramid has, I think, been one of the factors of their success.
I think with L1s, it always used to be about this blockchain trilemma, whether you choose decentralization, security, scalability, how do you make a selection along these criteria. And then with L2s, actually the promise was you can have all three, but we are introducing another dimension, which is potentially like liquidity fragmentation, right? So we have now so many L2s. We have Base, we have Arbitrum, we have WorldCoin L2, we have Uniswap L2, and so many more. But I think that it doesn't necessarily need to lead to liquidity fragmentation because we see Arbitrum and Base creating like very robust network effects. So it might be that eventually like there is again power law distribution and a lot of liquidity sticks to the places where actually most of the protocols and users are. So I think that Base has a legit chance to do so. I'm a little bit concerned about no token aspect because if you look into the crypto history, in order to make something explode, you have to create a wealth generation opportunity for your community, right? Like I think the best thing that happened to Solana was that FTX failed and they reached like very low price. Then they offered opportunity for new entrants to make 10x and then to start looking for something higher on the risk spectrum. If there was no FTX failure, there wouldn't be meme coin hype. Solana wouldn't be the chain with the largest on-chain volume. So I think at the end of the day, like why L2s haven't exploded yet is because they all start with very high FDV. Nobody makes money on the secondary market from holding these tokens, and they lack this effect where they make community loyal, and crypto community is loyal only if they make a lot of money out of your chain, right? So I'm not sure how this experiment will end up, but Base, because of Coinbase reputation, I think many US founders, it seems to have been finding comfort in building on Base, like they felt they are under some sort of umbrella, like, okay, this is a safe place to build in because users might be KYC. This is, at the end of the day, like Coinbase. So they had a lot of advantages because of the huge brand name, but it will be interesting whether they can be the #1 L2.
Yeah, I think the unique for Base is a branding effect, which means like they are backed by Coinbase, which means for a lot of developers, when they choose like which chain to deploy, they want to choose like something backed by Coinbase because we all know crypto now is going to the compliance and also more like regulated. So, and also Base doing a extremely good job like on building ecosystem, giving an ecosystem support. But it's still like it's still very early. Like so far from I know, like for all the friends I'm working with, they play Base tokens. They are not Base users. So I think that's all for all the crypto projects. The token holders, the users are different group. Then we need to basically merge to let people who play your tokens is your real user, real belief on your product. It's not real belief on your token price. So that's probably for most of L1 projects and application projects.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of those points. I think maybe one thing that wasn't brought up that I think is really interesting with Base is the potential to change first-time user experience. And when I think about the times I've used Base, a lot of it happens through the Coinbase Wallet app, and I think that that's a really major unlock for a lot of types of app developers where you're not having people kind of futz around with MetaMask and change RPCs. It feels a lot more like a traditional consumer experience. And I think that's something that's really exciting in this era. I also see that I think we're at 90K Bitcoin, according to my watch.
By the way, I want to compliment SynFutures' team decision to go on base. It seems it was very good. I think it would be. I mean,
we weren't sure because there's no clear incentives there. There's no airdrop farming, but we did find that there's a very vibrant.
That's good,
community.
actually.
Yeah, it's way more sustainable.
But it would be interesting for the audience to hear why didn't you choose Arbitrum?
Why we chose what?
Why you chose base over Arbitrum?
So we were actually deployed on Arbitrum before, our V2. We deployed there at the end of 2021, I think. Yeah, end of 2021. But it was actually a pre-Nitro upgrade, so it wasn't terribly user-friendly in terms of cost and speed, things like that. When we got back to looking at chains again, one of the reasons we chose Base was because it was such a stark difference from what other chains were. Again, all the other chains were pushing the airdrop farming narrative, and we think that's great for boosting temporary metrics, right? But these are vanity metrics. Everyone knows the number of wallets, the number of transactions. I mean, these don't actually mean anything from a long-term perspective, right? It's not very sustainable. And so we saw this thriving ecosystem, and we almost saw it as a way into like certain markets, right? Like you mentioned, it's very Western-centric. And I think it brings in like.
I didn't say that.
Well, you said what? It's the white man's BS.
That was Racer, actually. That was a Racer tweet.
Yeah, so that's one of we wanted to go for like a more sustainable chain, something that has a little more. Yeah, I think Jesse and his team, they're like very long-term vision focused, right?
Because I thought maybe one of the reasons is that. You felt it's unfair competition in Arbitrum. Like, because GMX and local DEXs got a ton of Arbitrum tokens, and then like they are now airdropping it, so they are kind of the transaction
That's
fees.
actually a good point. That did impact the decision because at some point when GMX was dominating on the Arbitrum ecosystem, I think the way that they had everything set up, especially with the DAO process, all of these early projects that gained traction on Arbitrum had outsized influence of what happens within that ecosystem. So it was definitely one of the factors we considered.
So I think Arbitrum governance fucked up.
I wouldn't say all that, but we're all learning, you know, DAO's included. All right, maybe we do one last question. Just would love to get your take on like what's the current investor appetite for infra projects. And I ask this because I feel like on crypto Twitter, you see this shift from infra to consumer. Everyone's like, oh, invest in consumer apps. We need more consumer. But do you guys actually see that shift happening from an institutional investing perspective?
Yeah, maybe I can try and take a stab at that. So I would say that in many ways, when you kind of look at, maybe it's hard as I have water in my hand, but when you look at like consumer and apps and infra, they really have these step function, changes. And where we sit today is that infra is a little bit ahead of apps, and we need to get to a place where net new apps are creating new infrastructure problems that are well scoped and enable new things to get built. What do we not like? We do not like infra solving made up problems that are for other infra companies. But I think when you look at traditional consumer tech outside of crypto, it's always the case that scaling is rubber bands and duct tape, and things are barely being held together at Facebook, Google, et cetera, in the early days, and that's how you get these really incredible innovations, whether open source or closed source.
I think for us, it's now we don't invest in infra. I think we don't want to invest in infra. It's only to trying to solve the creative problem or trying to just build the narratives and then worth like 700 million, more than $1 billion. We want to see like the infra projects have the real PMF, have their real users, real revenues with reasonable valuations. I think for whole industry, our valuation method need to change. Cannot be benchmark or Ethereum or Solana. Like that is our take right now. So that's the reason why we still look at infra. but it's more from PMF perspective, from reasonable valuation perspective.
I think Infra is good as long as it is introducing new degrees of freedom for developers to build interesting stuff that wasn't possible before. But I'm not a big fan of like new L1 that has like I don't know 50% improve in latency. I think that it's hard to find room for that in the market. But I don't know. Market sentiment is also shifting. I think in the bear market, everybody was talking about ZK. Technical sophistication, even like what is the first reaction of crypto industry to AI? ZKML, right? Like, and where is ZKML today? Nobody cares. Like true terminal, nobody cares whether it's a non-custodial wallet or what it is. So it seems there is a little bit of shift now. Like people want to see like good product experiences. The trustlessness is not that key, but. I like Infra that is introducing new degrees of freedom, like space and time, for instance. I like what they are doing with tamper-proof data. I think this is actually introducing new degrees of freedom, but we don't have time to discuss it.
Yeah, I think VCs will stop backing Infra when the returns aren't there anymore. But for right now, it's like.
Do you feel like the returns are still there? Because you have these like high FDV, low float launches for infra projects that have underperformed this year.
Yeah, but the alternative for like applications is what? Like you can't IPO, you're not going to get acquired. No one likes the tokens. Like so something has to change in the market. And I will say like I empathize. I'm like, we get like 1 million kind of like infra slop deals, like just Mad Libs, X, Y. I'm just like, I just can't stand that shit. But I will say like. It is way too consensus right now to be super bearish infra and super bullish apps, which if anything makes me way more bullish on infra. And so you never know, like maybe things will readjust. But yeah, I think we just try to look at everything from first principles and be like, would I use this? Would my dads use this? Something like that. I don't know.
Oh, I want one point on high FTV, low market cap. I think people have the wrong like assumption. People think crypto market liquidity is similar to stock market liquidity. That in stock market liquidity, you had 10% of company share. That's even like that's a markup on paper. There are high chance you will generate certain profit on that. But in crypto, if you don't even list on Binance, some project are even list on just some other exchange, and then when you hold 10% of the 3 billion FDV, there's no chance you'll exit at like 300 million. You probably list 10% of that. I think just people thinking crypto market is like the stock market. The on paper value is a real value.
I think about that a lot. I always think like, when are the institutional investors ever going to exit these markets, right? There's just not enough liquidity.
I don't know. I always think that, and then I'm like, you look at some of those like 2020 gems, I'm like, who the fuck is buying, XYZ? And people are. It's crazy. But yeah, I think, again, the meta exists until it gets played out, and I think it's replaced with a new meta, and like I don't think we're over infra meta by any means.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks so much for being here. A round of applause to our panelists.